The rain was relentless, lashing against the windshield of the old Aston Martin as Vicky Ashcombe gripped the steering wheel tighter. Headlights slashed through sheets of water, the world beyond dissolving into blackness and memory. She pressed the accelerator, but the car just groaned, its engine an orchestra of old wounds, much like her. Each mile of winding Cotswold road brought her closer to Ashcombe Grange, the estate she'd once called home, now crumbling under the weight of family secrets and unpaid debts. Wiltshire's countryside, with its brooding hills and ancient oaks, seemed to lean in, crowding the road, as if nature itself wanted to see how the prodigal daughter would face her ghosts. The digital clock flickered, stubbornly stuck at 11:53 p.m. But Big Ben's bell tower in the village would soon make midnight official. Vicky tried not to think about Afghanistan, about the echo of helicopters and the sour stink of cordite. She focused instead on the road ahead, but trauma, she'd learned, was like a shadow, silent, unshakable, always waiting to reclaim her mind. A gust of wind rattled the car, and as she crested the last hill, Ashcombe Grange came into view, a silhouette of gables, turrets, and forgotten grandeur. It looked as though the estate itself was holding its breath. Vicky let out her own, steadying her nerves. She turned onto the gravel drive, the stones crunching beneath the tires, headlights illuminating the wrought iron gates. Rust streaked the bars, and the family crest, a weathered ash tree, was barely visible. She slowed to a crawl, hands trembling as she punched in the code. The gate groaned open, just wide enough for her to squeeze through. Her heart thumped in her chest, a drumbeat of old memories and new fears. She tried the brights. Nothing. Just that watery, flickering beam. As she drove under the ancient yews, the mansion loomed larger, ivy snaking up its stone walls, windows black and watchful. It was said that the Ashcombe line was cursed, unlucky in war, unlucky in love. Vicky almost laughed. Some curses, she figured, just ran in the blood. She pulled up in front of the house. Her breath clouded the air, the heater long since given up. She switched off the engine, an act of mercy, really, after so many years of service, and the sudden silence roared in her ears. She was about to step out when she noticed it. A single light. No, a moving flashlight, flickering by the old stables just beyond the main house. Her skin prickled. There shouldn't be anyone here. The property had been abandoned for months, her Uncle Rupert's death having sent everything into legal and financial limbo. And yet, she hesitated, then grabbed her umbrella and the heavy maglite she'd packed from her military kit just in case. As she stepped into the night, the full force of the rain hit her, soaking her coat in seconds. She took a deep breath, the cold air cutting through her anxiety. The stable block, 300 years old, stone-built, roofs sagging under moss, lay ahead, a remnant of better days. Halfway there, she stopped. Spray-painted in dripping red letters across the stable doors were two words: keep out. Her pulse quickened. Vandalism? A warning? She pressed forward, boots splashing in puddles. As she reached the doors, the smell of gasoline hit her, faint but unmistakable. Suddenly, a car engine roared to life beyond the back paddock, its headlights cutting a harsh arc through the rain. Vicky ducked instinctively behind a stone pillar, heart thudding in her throat. The car, dark, maybe a Land Rover or BMW, she couldn't tell, shot away down the dirt track, tires spraying gravel. Whoever it was, they'd been here for a reason. She waited, muscles tensed, until the sound faded into the distance. The rain hammered harder. She forced herself to move, boots slipping in mud as she approached the stable door. The padlock hung twisted, recently forced. She aimed her flashlight at the ground. Hoof prints, scattered straw, something metallic glinting in the dirt. Lightning flashed, illuminating the estate for a brief, ghostly instant. The old bell tower on the church next door began to toll midnight, each clang ringing through the valley. The sound, once comforting, now seemed a countdown, a summons. Vicky glanced back toward the house, the windows reflecting nothing but her own fear. She whispered, "Get it together, Vic." She pushed open the stable door. The hinges shrieked, a scream swallowed by the storm. Inside, the darkness was absolute. The only light came from her trembling maglight. A shape loomed at the far end. A stall, its door wrenched off its hinges. The air was thick with the tang of frightened animals, sweat, and gasoline. Somewhere, a hoof stamped nervously. She scanned the walls, deep gouges, as if something or someone had tried to break out. She crouched to examine the ground, sawdust mixed with muddy water, and a trail of crimson paint leading deeper into the barn. Her mind raced. Who was here, and why? What were they after? Uncle Rupert's warning echoed in her mind, though she didn't understand it yet. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed behind her. Vicky whirled, flashlight beam slicing through the dark. Nothing. Just the storm, the echo of her own breath, and that overwhelming sense of being watched. She hesitated, then moved deeper inside, boots crunching on broken glass and old straw. As she stepped into the main aisle, she spotted a shape. A horse, jet black, eyes wild and rolling. Its flanks heaved, nostrils flared, white lightning-shaped marking on its brow gleaming in the torchlight. The horse reared back, slamming against the stall, and for a split second, Vicky saw terror mirrored in its gaze, her own panic staring back at her from a pair of animal eyes. She reached out, voice shaking. Easy. Easy now. Somewhere behind her, another door creaked. A shadow flitted past, gone before she could turn. The bell tolled once more, and in that moment, Vicky Ashcombe realized she wasn't alone at Ashcombe Grange tonight. And whatever had happened here, it was only just beginning. Dawn in Wiltshire comes slow and gray, especially after a night battered by rain and nerves. The sky above Ashcombe Grange looked bruised, the clouds drifting low across the hills like the smoke of forgotten battles. Vicky had barely slept. After the midnight encounter at the stable, she'd retreated to the dusty old study in the main house, boots still caked with mud, mind running in circles. All night she kept replaying the flashes, the spray-painted warning, the engine's snarl in the darkness, the wild, haunted horse with the white-crowned brow. She found herself staring at her hands, fingers twitching, as if they still gripped the cold steel of her service rifle. Afghanistan, the base at Lashkar Gah, the night patrols. She told herself she was safe now, but sometimes her brain didn't get the message. She kept seeing the horse's eyes, the same edge of panic she'd seen in the mirror 1,000 times since returning home. Sunlight tried and failed to pierce the rain-streaked windows. By 6:30, Vicky was outside again, boots sinking into the spongy ground, resolve hardening with each step. She would get answers. Whoever broke in last night hadn't come just for mischief. There was purpose in the mess they'd left, and she had to find out what it was. She pressed her shoulder against the warped stable door and forced it open. The inside smelled of wet hay, fear, and old secrets. She found the stall door half off its hinges, splintered wood and tangled rope on the ground. The black horse was still there. Midnight Crown, if the stall's nameplate could be believed. sides heaving, nostrils flaring. He looked like he hadn't rested at all, ears flicking at every sound, eyes white with alarm. As Vicky stepped forward, a glint of metal caught her eye. A bit of chain, broken, was tangled in the hay. Had someone tried to steal the horse? Or silence him? She moved slowly, one step at a time, murmuring, "Easy, fella. I'm not here to hurt you." Her voice was hoarse, more for her own comfort than his. Midnight Crown snorted and backed deeper into the stall. She felt the rising tide of anxiety, her chest tightening, memories flooding in. There had been a night, long ago outside Kandahar, when a flash of movement and a clang of metal had meant disaster. Her vision narrowed, breath coming short. A clang, this time real, jerked her back to the present. A length of pipe rolled from the rafters above, clattering to the ground. The noise sent Midnight Crown into a frenzy, hooves striking out, slamming the back wall. The stall door swung open under the impact. Vicky tried to step back, but her knees gave out. She crashed to the floor, pain shooting up her leg. For a moment, the barn blurred, noise swelling until it drowned out everything but her pulse. She curled in, willing the memories away. Not now. Not here. But the horse was there, not fleeing, not attacking, just frozen, breath misting in the morning air. The two of them, soldier and steed, trapped by fear, haunted by something neither could name. Minutes ticked by. The first light crept along the stable's stone walls, painting everything with a thin, sickly yellow. Vicky forced herself up, using the wall for support. Her hands shook as she reached into her coat pocket for a lump of sugar she'd found in the kitchen drawer. A childhood memory, perhaps, but a risk worth taking. She stretched out her hand. Midnight Crown's ears twitched, and for a heartbeat she thought he'd bolt. But then, slowly, he stepped forward, nostrils trembling, and took the sugar cube from her palm. The touch was electric, a moment of connection across a gulf of pain. Vicky swallowed hard. "That's it, boy. Good lad. You're safe here." She brushed his nose, feeling the sweat and tremor in his muscles, the wild edge just under the skin. He nickered, a low, anxious sound. She knew that sound. She'd made it herself sometimes, in the dead of night. They stood together, breathing. A loose piece of wood dropped from the stall wall, startling both of them. Vicky steadied him, running her hand down his neck, fingers brushing scars, old and new. Midnight Crown was beautiful, but battered. Ribs too sharp, a gash healing along his flank, and that peculiar white crown-shaped mark on his forehead. He looked, Vicky thought, like a survivor. She scanned the rest of the stall, trying to make sense of what she saw. A battered feed bucket. A patch of old blood on the straw. Strange, dark stains along the boards. Someone had cared for this horse once, but lately, it seemed, care had given way to neglect, or something worse. The broken chain, the forced stall door, the crude warning outside. Someone wanted to scare her, or maybe just keep secrets buried. She stood, brushing off her coat, and looked him in the eye. "What happened to you, huh? What did you see last night?" She almost laughed at herself, talking to a horse as if he could answer. But the way he met her gaze, something passed between them. He'd seen things, too. Maybe that's what survivors recognized in each other. She limped out into the aisle, mind racing. She'd have to call someone. Maybe Harry Beaumont, the old stable manager, or Ollie Prescott, her one-time comrade turned investigative reporter. But for now, she stayed with Midnight Crown, stroking his mane, grounding herself in the steady rise and fall of his breath. Suddenly, a phone vibrated in her pocket. A new number, no caller ID. She hesitated, then answered. Silence on the other end, except for heavy breathing. Then a click. The call cut off. Vicky's heart pounded. She looked at the spray-painted door again, at the horse, at the dawn breaking over Ashcombe Grange. She'd come home looking for closure, for a way out. But as the old bell tower chimed 7, she knew, deep down, she and Midnight Crown were bound together now, two damaged souls circling the same mystery. Outside, the rain eased, but inside, a storm was only just beginning. The kitchen of Ashcombe Grange was a graveyard of porcelain and dust. Morning light crept in through stained glass windows, coloring the cracked tiles in watery reds and blues. Vicky filled the battered kettle and stared at the garden beyond, where wild roses tangled with nettles, and the hedge had long since given up pretending to be a wall. Her nerves hummed from the night and the rough sunrise in the stable. But routine was armor, so she brewed black tea, found a biscuit in the old tin, and forced herself to eat. The silence was thick, broken only by the distant sound of crows and the low rumble of wind. Her Uncle Rupert's portrait watched from above the mantel, his expression pinched, the lines of disappointment carved deep. She sighed and sipped her tea, letting the bitterness bring her back to herself. She had come home, she reminded herself, to sign papers, pay debts, and finally be free of the past. That was the plan. But the plan was already unraveling. She couldn't get Midnight Crown's wild, haunted eyes out of her mind, or the warning painted on the stable doors, or the silent, menacing phone call at dawn. She ran a finger along the battered wooden table. So many arguments, so many birthdays, so much history layered here. She shook herself. Time to deal with reality. In the main hall, a pile of unopened letters waited on the sideboard. Bills, condolences, legal threats. She found the one she was looking for, her name written in her uncle's sharp, old-fashioned hand. She hesitated, then broke the seal. The letter inside was short, but heavy as stone. Vicky, if you're reading this, you're the last Ashcombe left with the stomach to face the truth. Don't trust Fitzroy. The horse knows everything. Trust yourself, even when you doubt it most. Rupert. She read it 3 times, the words scratching at her brain. Don't trust Fitzroy. That meant Rupert Fitzroy, the local councilman and landlord, an old family friend, who'd become a political force in the county, always circling, always looking for the next bit of land to gobble up. The horse knows everything. She stared out at the yard, where Midnight Crown was finally grazing, his shadow long in the morning sun. Her phone buzzed again. Messages from the estate agent. Reminders of the meeting she was supposed to have that afternoon to finalize the sale. She glanced at the papers. Sign, hand over the keys, collect what little was left, and go. She felt the pull of escape, the urge to walk away from ghosts and rotting memories, to leave Wiltshire behind for good. But then she remembered the sugar cube, the way Midnight Crown had looked at her, wild but trusting for a moment, and her uncle's words. The horse knows everything. There was something rotten here, something deeper than old debts and fading glory. Maybe, for once, running was not the answer. She pushed the estate agent's number aside and instead dialed Harry Beaumont. Harry had run the stables since Vicky was a kid, back when the Ashcombes still had money and horses and hope. These days he lived in a tiny flat above the village pub, a man shrunk by guilt and drink. But if anyone knew what was happening at Ashcombe Grange, it would be Harry. No answer. just the tired voice of his voicemail. Vicky left a short message, careful not to mention the horse or last night's intruder. She hung up, then did something impulsive. She deleted the appointment with the estate agent and shut off her phone. She was staying, at least for today. She headed back out to the yard. The air was clean after the storm, smelling of earth and distant rain. Midnight Crown stood by the fence, ears twitching. She climbed over and approached him, this time moving with more confidence. "Hey, partner. I think we're both stuck here a while longer." The horse lowered his head, nudged her shoulder. Vicky smiled for the first time in weeks. She scratched behind his ears, checking the wound on his flank. Still healing, but less raw in the daylight. She ran her hand along his side, feeling the rough patches, the scars, the story written in his skin. Survivors, both of them. As she worked, she spotted something odd in the mud near the fence. A set of tire tracks, too fresh to be left over from before her arrival. She crouched, tracing the grooves. Not her car. Someone else had been here. Probably the same visitor who'd fled in the night. The sense of unease deepened. She glanced up at the stable roof. Was that a glint of metal, maybe a hidden camera or something left behind? Or just nerves? She returned Midnight Crown to his stall and locked it carefully, double-checking the bolts. As she turned to leave, a folded piece of paper fell from the tack shelf. She opened it, heart thudding. Inside was a crude map of the estate, certain areas circled in red. Paddock, hayloft, the old springhouse. A list of initials ran down one side. MC, RA, RF, Midnight Crown, Rupert Ashcombe, Rupert Fitzroy. Her head spun. Back in the house, she poured another cup of tea and sat with her uncle's letter, the map, and her own restless thoughts. She felt the weight of history, her families, the estates, even the countries, pressing down, demanding she not just walk away. Midnight Crown needed her. The land needed her. Maybe she needed them too. By midday, Vicky had made her decision. She would stay, at least until she figured out what was really going on. She canceled all calls to the agent, sent a short message to her one-time friend Ollie Prescott, and barricaded the doors for the night. As rain began to fall again, Vicky sat by the kitchen window, watching Midnight Crown graze. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, only that for the first time since she'd come back, she was no longer just passing through. She was home, and she was ready to fight for it. The next day, a nervous hush hung over Ashcombe Grange. Vicky paced the front hallway, boot heels echoing on ancient flagstones, unable to settle. Every creak of the old house, every flutter of bird wings in the courtyard set her on edge. Last night's decision to stay had felt right, almost brave. But now the reality of it pressed down, heavy as storm clouds. Outside, the sky threatened more rain. The muddy yard was pocked with fresh hoof prints and tire tracks, reminders that someone, or something, was circling closer. She spent the early morning checking locks, re-inspecting the stable and calling Harry Beaumont again, but the old stable manager's phone went unanswered. Vicky found herself staring at the horse, Midnight Crown, who watched her with that same intelligent wariness. The two had settled into a wary truce. He let her brush his mane. She spoke to him in a soft tone, and for those brief minutes, the ghosts of her past seemed to hold their breath. By 10 o'clock, she was making coffee when the rumble of a small engine caught her ear. She peered through the curtain and almost smiled. A battered red Mini Cooper bounced down the long drive, mud splashing the windows, antenna flapping like a white flag. There was only one person in the world who drove like that. Oliver Ollie Prescott. He parked with a screech, wrenched open the door, and emerged in a flurry of camera gear, tangled messenger bags, and his usual mop of sandy hair. He wore a rain jacket, an old rugby shirt, and a look of delighted surprise as he spotted Vicky in the doorway. "Vicky Ashcombe, as I live and breathe. Figured you'd be halfway to Scotland by now," he called, slamming the Minnie's door and shouldering his bag. He looked older than the last time she'd seen him. Laugh lines a little deeper, eyes a little more tired, but his grin was the same. Ollie had a way of making you feel like you'd just pulled off the world's greatest prank, even when the joke was on you. Vicky smirked. "Almost made it. House wouldn't let me go. Or maybe it's the weather. Or the ghosts." Ollie's eyes narrowed, picking up on her tension. "Got your message. You sounded, well, not your usual Ice Queen self. So what's really going on, Vic? Bad juju? Trouble in the stables?" She nodded, unable to hide the worry in her face. "Something's off here, Ollie. Uncle Rupert left more than just debt and a decaying house. Someone broke in the first night I was back. Left a warning, tried to scare me off. And that's not all. Midnight Crown, Rupert's prized black horse, is still here. Worse for wear, but alive. Someone tried to take him or maybe silence him." Ollie whistled, fishing a body cam out of his bag and strapping it across his chest. "Always the dramatics at Ashcombe Grange, huh? Let's have a look then. Show me the crime scene." Together they crossed the yard to the stable, the mud sucking at their boots. Ollie filmed everything. Door locks, hoof prints, the remnants of last night's struggle. He questioned her in his quick, clipped way, teasing out every detail, snapping photos of the red "Keep Out" spray paint and the broken chain. He was in his element now, the investigative journalist, part bloodhound, part bulldog. "These tracks," he muttered, crouching by the stall. "Two sets. Yours and someone heavier. Maybe boots, maybe galoshes. And this?" He pointed at the bit of chain. "Someone tried to make sure the horse didn't get away, or maybe didn't want him found. Any cameras around? Anything missing?" Vicky shook her head. "Not that I've noticed. I did find this, though." She handed him the crude map with initials, the one she'd found yesterday. Ollie studied it, eyebrows rising. Well, well, looks like someone's mapped out the estate better than the Ordnance Survey. MC, that's your horse. RA, Rupert Ashcombe. RF, Rupert Fitzroy, you think?" She nodded, jaw tight. "Uncle Rupert warned me in his letter. Don't trust Fitzroy. Said the horse knows everything. What the hell does that mean, Ollie? What could Fitzroy want with an old racing stud and a rundown estate?" Ollie stood, brushing dirt from his knees, eyes gleaming. "That's the million-pound question, isn't it? Fitzroy's been sniffing around for ages, trying to buy up land for his precious golf course. But this feels messier, more desperate. Let's check Rupert's old tack room. If there's evidence, he'd have hidden it somewhere safe. Or at least, somewhere he thought was safe." The tack room was cluttered with memories. Ancient saddles, cracked riding boots, faded rosettes from horse shows long past. Vicky let her fingers trail along a dusty bridle, remembering the day she won her first ribbon, her uncle beaming with pride. Ollie poked around with more purpose, prying up loose floorboards and rummaging through boxes of receipts and bills. Then, click. He pried open the lining of an old saddle and pulled out a flash drive, wrapped in oilskin. "Got something," he said, holding it up to the light. "You don't hide a USB unless you've got secrets to keep." They hurried back to the house. Ollie's laptop whirred to life on the scarred kitchen table. The files loaded slowly, scanned vet reports, insurance documents, dozens of cryptic emails. One name appeared again and again, Rupert Fitzroy, always signed RF, and always just a little too threatening. The messages spoke of payouts, fake injuries, horse trades gone wrong. The insurance forms showed a pattern. Claims for horses that had accidentally been injured, with Rupert's signature and Fitzroy's silent approval. Vicky's pulse raced as she read, realizing just how deep the rot went. This was more than family drama, more than a feud between old money and new power. This was crime, organized, deliberate, and close to home. Ollie whistled. "You've got yourself a story here, Vic, and a war. What do you want to do?" Vicky stared at the screen, then out at Midnight Crown, grazing under the storm-dark sky. Her voice was calm, but inside a storm was brewing. "We expose them, Ollie, all of them. No more running, no more hiding. We fight." And for the first time in years, as thunder rolled across the hills, she felt ready. The wind howled around Ashcombe Grange as dusk settled in, rattling window panes and tossing branches against the eaves. Shadows crept across the walls and floors, flickering with each gust that slipped through ancient cracks. Vicky moved through the house with purpose, checking every bolt and latch, flashlight swinging from her hand. Ollie worked at the kitchen table, piecing together a timeline from the files they'd unearthed, headphones on and body cam charging by his elbow. The air inside felt tense, electric, like the moment before a firefight. By 10 o'clock, a thick, uneasy fog had rolled in from the hills, swallowing the house and the stables, muting the world outside to shapes and whispers. Midnight Crown had grown restless, pacing his stall, snorting, eyes wide and white as he listened to sounds only he could hear. Vicky visited him often, each time finding new reasons to worry. A flicker in the dark, a whiff of gasoline, a sense that someone was watching from the trees. At 11:30, Ollie stretched and yawned, rubbing his eyes. "I'm calling it a night, Vic. If I don't sleep now, I'll be useless at sunrise. You should get some rest, too." But Vicky shook her head. "I'll do one last check of the stables. I won't sleep anyway. You lock up here." Ollie nodded, but his eyes lingered on her. "Don't be a hero, Ashcombe. If you see anything—" "I'll call you," she promised, forcing a small smile. She pulled on her raincoat and slipped outside, boots crunching on gravel. The night was thick and muffled, every sound swallowed in mist. The security lights near the stables flickered as she passed, casting her shadow 20 feet tall against the fog. She paused, breathing in the damp, listening. Nothing but wind and the distant low of cattle. She entered the stable quietly. Midnight Crown greeted her with a nervous nicker. She ran a calming hand down his neck, whispering, "Easy, boy. It's just me." But the horse's skin quivered beneath her palm, his eyes fixed on the far wall. That's when she heard it. A faint, metallic scrape from the hayloft above, followed by a soft, deliberate footstep. Her heart slammed in her chest. She switched off her flashlight and pressed herself against the stall, willing her breathing to slow. She reached into her coat for her phone, thumb hovering over Ollie's number. A sudden, acrid smell hit her. Smoke. Her pulse spiked as she craned her neck, spotting a thin coil of gray drifting down from the loft. Panic surged. Someone had set fire to the hay above. She grabbed Midnight Crown's halter and fumbled with the latch. "We have to go," she whispered, voice shaking as she wrestled the stubborn metal free. Smoke poured down now, thick and choking, flames crackling above her. Somewhere outside, an engine roared, a motorbike by the sound, tearing off into the night. Vicky yanked the stall door open. Midnight Crown lunged forward, nostrils flaring, wild with fear. She threw herself onto his back. No time for a saddle, just bareback and adrenaline. She ducked as a burning beam crashed down, sparks showering her hair and coat. She kicked Midnight Crown's sides. "Go, go!" The horse bolted, smashing through the open stable doors into the foggy night. Firelight danced across the yard behind them, smoke pouring from the roof. Vicky clung to Midnight Crown's mane, legs gripping his sides, vision swimming with terror and heat. They tore across the muddy field, hooves churning up earth, fire reflecting off the rolling fog. Back at the house, Ollie burst out the back door, hauling a fire extinguisher and a heavy hose. He sprinted toward the inferno, teeth clenched, muttering curses. He smashed the nozzle against the wall and cranked open the hydrant, sending a geyser of water arcing into the flames. The water sizzled, steam billowing up, but the fire had already found good fuel in the dry hay and old timber. "Vicky!" Ollie yelled, voice hoarse as he sprayed down the burning wall. "Are you all right?" From the edge of the paddock, Vicky raised her arm, signaling through the haze. Midnight Crown danced beneath her, muscles quivering, flanks heaving with effort and fear. The fire threw strange shadows across the grass, sirens wailing in the distance as neighbors finally saw the glow and called for help. She slid off the horse's back, legs buckling, head spinning. She coughed hard, chest burning, vision blurry with smoke and tears. Midnight Crown pressed his nose against her shoulder, shivering. She hugged his neck, burying her face in his mane, grateful for his strength and wild courage. Within minutes, the fire brigade arrived, their red engines slicing through the mist, men in yellow slickers leaping into action. They doused the flames, axes swinging, hoses roaring. The stable was saved, but the loft was blackened, beams charred, the air reeking of burned hay and melted plastic. A police officer in a reflective vest pulled Vicky aside, notebook in hand. "You all right, ma'am? Did you see anyone?" Vicky shook her head, voice ragged. Motorbike, black helmet, leather jacket. Set the fire in the loft. Meant to trap the horse, maybe me too. He was gone before I could see his face. The officer frowned, jotting notes. "We'll get a statement. This isn't the first time Fitzroy's name's come up with threats in the area, you know. You'd better keep your doors locked tonight." By the time dawn crept over the hills, the fire was out. The stable was scarred but standing. Midnight Crown was safe, grazing quietly as if nothing had happened. Vicky leaned against the fence, Ollie at her side, both of them exhausted but alive. Ollie clapped her gently on the shoulder. "You all right, Vic?" She nodded, eyes on the horizon. "Someone wants this horse gone. Someone wants us scared." Ollie grinned, tired but determined. "Good thing you're not easily scared." Vicky managed a faint smile. "Not anymore. I've seen worse." They stood together as the sun broke through the clouds, golden light spilling over the battered estate. It felt like a new beginning, even as the shadows lingered. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, Vicky was certain she wasn't alone. The smoky dawn after the fire brought little comfort. Ashcombe Grange smoldered quietly, fire brigade and police finally gone, leaving behind only scorched wood, trampled mud, and a lingering, uneasy silence. Vicky rinsed her face in the icy kitchen sink, skin stinging, jaw set. Her phone had already buzzed with messages, one from the local police, one from her solicitor, and most chillingly, a single text from an unknown number. "Should have left, when you had the chance." She deleted the message, forced her hands to steady. No more fear, no more running, unless it meant protecting Midnight Crown. As she stared out the window, she saw the black horse dozing, his coat still glossy despite the ordeal, his sides marked with soot. Ollie limped into the kitchen, mug in hand, face gray with exhaustion. "We can't keep him here, Vic," he said quietly. "They'll try again. You know it." She nodded. "I do. But we can't just send him to the knackers either. He's evidence. He's family now." A plan took shape, sharp and practical. She'd been trained for logistics under fire. Moving Midnight Crown would be hard, but not impossible. Ollie called a local farrier friend who owed him a favor, and within an hour a battered horse trailer pulled up behind the house. Vicky threw a blanket over Midnight Crown's back, whispering reassurance as the horse nervously stepped up the ramp. The trailer doors shut with a clang. Ollie slid into the passenger seat, filming everything just in case. They drove east, taking back lanes through the misty hills, leaving Ashcombe Grange hidden in fog and police tape. The destination: Lady Bridget Fairfax's stable, a rambling, orderly farm on the far side of the county, tucked behind rows of ancient yews and privet hedges. Lady Bridget had known Vicky's father before his decline and had a reputation for iron will, a quick wit, and a soft spot for lost causes. She'd also spent years championing animal welfare, making her the perfect ally. Lady Bridget met them at the gate, her tall frame clad in a waxed jacket and riding boots, silver hair pulled back tight. Her sharp eyes softened when she saw Vicky and Midnight Crown. "You always did bring trouble to my doorstep, Victoria," she said dryly, but with a smile. "Let's get him settled, then you can tell me everything." Vicky led Midnight Crown into a spacious box stall lined with fresh straw. The horse trembled, still on edge, but soon calmed under Lady Bridget's steady hand and quiet words. "He's a beautiful animal," Bridget murmured, examining the scars, the white crown, the soreness in the leg. "Someone's worked him hard, and not with kindness." As Ollie set up his camera and checked messages, Vicky followed Lady Bridget to her sitting room. It was a world away from Ashcombe Grange, warm, crowded with books and old hunting prints, the air filled with the scent of wood smoke and strong tea. They sat by the fire, Bridget pouring out 2 mugs. "Now talk," she commanded. Vicky told her everything: the break-in, the red warning, Rupert's will, the USB drive, the fire, and Fitzroy's name lurking behind every thread. Lady Bridget listened in silence, nodding at intervals. "Rupert Fitzroy's always had his claws in the racing business," Bridget said when Vicky finished. "But he's gotten bolder since your uncle died. There were rumors, injured horses, forged insurance, money funneled through charity galas. Years ago, he tried to buy my best jumper for pennies, claimed he wanted to rehabilitate her for special needs children. 2 months later, the poor creature ended up at a slaughter auction. That's when I cut all ties." Vicky felt her anger rising. "He's running a racket, isn't he? Buying injured horses cheap, filing insurance, laundering through charity?" Bridget nodded. "And using every trick in the book to shut up witnesses. Last year, one of his trainers blew the whistle. Within weeks, the man vanished. Relocated to Spain, the papers said, but no one's heard from him since." A knock at the door startled them both. Ollie stuck his head in, eyes wide. "Harry Beaumont's here. Says he needs to talk." Harry looked older than Vicky remembered, his stoop deeper, eyes haunted. He twisted his cap in his hands, unable to meet her gaze. "Harry, what's wrong?" Vicky asked gently. He hesitated, swallowing hard. It's my fault, Vicky. All of it. Fitzroy paid me off. Years ago, after your father's death, money was tight. Fitzroy came around, told me if I kept my mouth shut about some injuries, forged vet records and the like, he'd take care of my mortgage. I knew it was wrong, but I thought I could protect the horses, at least a little. I'm so sorry. Vicky took a shaky breath. Harry, you have to testify. We need your statement. Without it, Fitzroy will bury us in lawyers and threats. Harry's hands shook. I know. I've been carrying this for too long. I'll say whatever you need. Lady Bridget rose, putting a hand on his shoulder. You did the wrong thing, but you're here now. That counts for something. They talked for an hour, piecing together dates and names, charity auctions, missing horses, trainers who'd left under suspicious circumstances. Ollie recorded everything, his camera panning over Harry's worn face as the old man told his story. Outside, Midnight Crown rested in the shade, ears twitching, finally at peace for a moment. When evening came, Vicky stood alone by the paddock fence, watching the sky turn lavender over the rolling hills. She knew tomorrow would bring more threats, more danger, but tonight she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The truth was coming together. Allies were stepping forward, and Fitzroy, for the first time, would have to face the people he'd hurt. She stroked Midnight Crown's mane, her voice steady. We're not running anymore, boy. This time we fight. And in the hush of twilight, the black horse nudged her gently, as if he understood every word. Sunlight spilled gold across the Badminton estate, glinting on horse trailers, Land Rovers, and the white tents scattered across the sprawling fields. The Badminton Horse Trials had always been a place for royalty and commoners to mingle, an event dripping with tradition, old money, and the scent of wet grass and leather polish. On this particular morning, though, excitement hung in the air like static. The crowds pressed close to the rails, chatter and laughter swirling as handlers fussed over their mounts and cameras flashed. Vicky paced near the practice ring, her boots caked with mud, fingers clenching the lead rope that held Midnight Crown. The black horse had been groomed to a shine, his white crown mark clean against his brow, his eyes sharp and wary. She could feel his tension, his muscles twitching, ears flicking as new sights and smells pressed in. He was a racehorse among eventers, and it showed, but today that difference was their strength. Ollie hovered at her elbow, his camera disguised under a jacket, his phone set to live stream as backup. He scanned the crowd, whispering updates. BBC's crew is over by the press tent. Local news, too. I saw Fitzroy's people setting up banners near the charity stand. They're going big, Vic. He's got the council's full support. Vicky's jaw tightened. He's hiding in plain sight, promising animal welfare while running the dirtiest racket in the county. Ollie nodded. Let's hit him where it hurts. We hand off the files to the BBC first. Then you lead Midnight Crown right into the ring and force their hand. Her pulse pounded. She'd faced enemy fire before, but nothing like this. Exposing corruption in front of thousands, risking everything with cameras rolling and Fitzroy's thugs nearby. She reached out, squeezing Midnight Crown's mane for courage. The event buzzed with official speeches, interviews, and photo ops. Fitzroy himself stood on a low stage, his tweed suit immaculate, flanked by smiling councillors and society matrons. A banner fluttered behind him. Support our horses, Ashcombe Trust fundraiser. The hypocrisy made Vicky's stomach churn. As he began his speech about protecting vulnerable animals and rural heritage, Vicky and Ollie slipped around the edge of the crowd, ducking under ropes and slipping past security. They found the BBC team near the paddock, 2 producers and a presenter, all young, sharp-eyed, and hungry for scandal. Ollie flashed his press credentials and whispered, "We've got proof Fitzroy's been running a multi-million-pound insurance scam, injured horses, fake charity, the works. All on this USB." The producers pounced, plugging in the drive and scrolling through the files. Rupert's emails, insurance fraud, Harry's recorded testimony, all neatly arranged. The presenter's eyes widened. "This is huge. Are you willing to go on camera?" Vicky shook her head. "Not yet. Let the evidence speak first. I'll confront Fitzroy in the arena. Just make sure your cameras are rolling." Ollie grinned, nerves electric. "We're live on YouTube too. If the council shuts us down, the world will still see." The plan moved fast. The BBC began prepping a segment, quietly pulling aside the chief steward and event officials. Fitzroy, seeing movement, started to sweat, his smile faltering as he fielded more questions than he liked. Vicky gave Midnight Crown a pat, slipped into the lead, and strode straight toward the show ring, the black horse pacing beside her like a shadow. Fitzroy's handler blocked her way, voice oily and cold. "Sorry, madam, this area is for scheduled riders only. Please step back." Vicky met his eyes, steel in her voice. "I'm here on behalf of the Ashcombe family. This horse is the last surviving witness to your boss's crimes." The handler sneered. "You'll be escorted out." But Ollie appeared at Vicky's shoulder, holding up his press badge and phone, camera rolling. "BBC's already got the story. Unless you want to be seen throwing out a war veteran in the Ashcombe air, I suggest you stand down." The handler faltered, eyes flicking to the watching crowd, then melted away. Vicky marched forward, Midnight Crown steady at her side, their steps drawing curious glances and murmurs from onlookers. At the ring entrance, Vicky raised her voice, projecting for the cameras and crowd. "This horse survived arson at Ashcombe Grange, the same property Rupert Fitzroy wants for his private golf course. I have evidence Fitzroy orchestrated insurance fraud and animal cruelty for years. Today, in front of witnesses, I'm asking the authorities to open an investigation." Fitzroy stormed off the stage, face red, voice booming. "This is slander! You have no proof! Security! Remove her!" A cluster of private security guards advanced, but the crowd, sensing the tension and injustice, surged forward in support of Vicky. BBC's camera crew broadcast live as Ollie narrated in real time, pointing out Fitzroy's connections and flashing the stolen emails on his phone. The situation threatened to boil over. Fitzroy, desperate, shouted at the chief steward, waving contracts and legal threats. But as Vicky held her ground, more voices rose in the crowd. Someone began chanting her name. Midnight Crown tossed his head, stamping the grass, as if feeling the moment's gravity. Suddenly, a police constable arrived, summoned by the mounting chaos. He listened as Vicky summarized the evidence and Fitzroy's history, taking notes and promising to call in the National Crime Agency if warranted. Fitzroy sputtered, red-faced, but for the first time looked truly frightened. "You're finished, Fitzroy," Vicky said quietly. "You'll never hurt another animal again." The crowd cheered, cameras still rolling. Midnight Crown stood tall beside her, every muscle taut, white crown shining in the sun. At that moment, it didn't matter who owned the land or whose family name was on the banners. What mattered was justice and the will to see it through. As the event dissolved into shouts and questions, Vicky felt a wave of clarity. The battle wasn't over, but today, the world finally saw the truth. The crowd at Badminton was buzzing. What started as whispers and curious glances had now swelled into a full-blown commotion. Fitzroy's carefully staged charity event was unraveling in front of the cameras, and the press was hungry for more. BBC's coverage was already streaming live to tens of thousands. Ollie's YouTube channel had spiked with comments and viewers. Notifications scrolled in a relentless cascade as people from across the country chimed in with shock, outrage, and support. Vicky stood beside Midnight Crown at the rail, her heart pounding. Fitzroy was pacing near the judge's tent, on the phone with someone, face tight with panic and rage. Ollie glanced at her, phone held out like a shield. "The world's watching, Vic. They can't shut you up now." Suddenly, Harry Beaumont emerged from the crush, hands shaking, face drawn. He looked at Vicky, then at the police constable, who had just finished taking her statement. Harry's voice quivered, but he raised it for all to hear. "I have something to say. I was stable manager at Ashcombe Grange for over 20 years. Rupert Fitzroy paid me to keep quiet about injured horses, fake injuries, all of it. I kept records. I'm sorry, but I'm done lying." A hush fell. For a moment, the only sound was the wind rattling the sponsor banners and the distant whinny of horses warming up for their events. Vicky put a hand on Harry's shoulder, steadying him. The constable's pen paused above his notebook, eyes sharpening. Fitzroy, sensing the tide shifting, tried to push through the crowd, but people stepped aside, letting the cameras catch his every move. Ollie's livestream caught Harry's words in real time. The comment section exploded. "Lock him up! Animal abuser! Protect the whistleblower!" Vicky looked at Ollie, her mind racing. "We have to keep this going. If the police stall, public pressure is the only thing that'll force their hand." The BBC presenter, sensing a headline, pulled Harry and Vicky aside. "We need a full statement on camera. Are you ready?" Vicky hesitated only a second, then nodded. She stood tall, Midnight Crown's halter in her grip, staring straight into the lens. "My name is Victoria Ashcombe. My family's land and horses were targeted by a criminal ring operating under the cover of charity and animal welfare. We have evidence, files, emails, witness testimony, showing Mr. Rupert Fitzroy orchestrated insurance fraud and cruelty for profit. This horse, Midnight Crown, survived an arson attack meant to silence him and destroy evidence. We ask the National Crime Agency to intervene now, before any more animals or people get hurt." Harry followed, voice trembling but clear. "I lied for years because I was afraid, but I can't carry it anymore. Fitzroy threatened me, threatened the horses, threatened Vicky's family. I'm ready to tell everything." The presenter turned to the camera. "You heard it here live. If these allegations are true, it's the biggest animal welfare scandal in the county's history." Fitzroy, seeing his narrative slipping away, tried a last-ditch defense. "This is character assassination. These people are bitter, out for revenge. There's no real evidence." But the BBC team, now joined by a producer from ITV and a local newspaper, began shouting questions. What about the missing charity funds? The forged insurance claims? Why did Harry Beaumont leave Ashcombe after 30 years? Can you explain the emails signed RF? Fitzroy stumbled over his words, sweat beading on his brow. "I'll have my lawyers speak to you." No further comment. Suddenly, the air was split by sirens. 2 unmarked police cars and a black van rolled up by the stables, doors opening as officers in tactical vests fanned out. The National Crime Agency had arrived, tipped off by the mountain of evidence and the sheer volume of public pressure flooding social media. The lead officer approached Fitzroy, showing his badge. Rupert Fitzroy, you are under arrest on suspicion of insurance fraud, animal cruelty, arson, and conspiracy to commit perjury. You have the right to remain silent. Cameras caught the moment as officers cuffed Fitzroy, who stammered protests but found no allies in the crowd. As he was led away, a smattering of applause rose, swelling until even the horses in the paddock turned their heads toward the commotion. Ollie kept his stream rolling, narrating with a sense of stunned relief. You're seeing history, folks. The Ashcombe case is breaking wide open. For once, justice doesn't seem like just a word. Vicky let out a long, shaking breath. She hugged Harry, who nearly collapsed from relief. The police took their official statements as BBC reporters lined up for interviews. Midnight Crown stood quietly by her side, calm despite the chaos, as if he understood that the storm had finally broken. The event organizers, realizing the magnitude of what had just happened, made an announcement over the loudspeaker. Ladies and gentlemen, the afternoon's competitions will be postponed due to an ongoing police investigation. We thank you for your patience and cooperation. As the crowd drifted toward the exits, clusters of people stopped to thank Vicky, to pat Harry on the back, to snap photos of Midnight Crown. Children pressed close, wanting to stroke his velvet nose, their parents whispering about the bravest horse in England. Ollie put a hand on Vicky's shoulder, voice choked with pride. You did it. You really did it. She smiled, eyes shining with tears she didn't bother to hide. We did it, Ollie. All of us. And I think Rupert, my uncle, would have been proud. For the first time in years, Ashcombe's name meant something good again. The fight wasn't over, but the worst villains were unmasked, and the world had seen what courage and truth could do. As the sun slipped behind the stands and the TV vans rolled out, Vicky led Midnight Crown into the soft green paddock, letting him graze in peace. She looked up at the sky, feeling lighter than she had in a decade. Sometimes it turned out, justice really did ride on four hooves. In the weeks following Fitzroy's arrest and the spectacular public reckoning at Badminton, Ashcombe Grange stood silent, then slowly, gently, began to breathe again. The old estate was battered but still standing. Its scars, blackened beams in the stable, burned grass by the paddock, paint peeling from walls, were now marks of survival, not of shame. Reporters trickled away, the news vans vanished, but something new was growing on the land, as if the soil itself sensed hope for the first time in years. Vicky found herself busier than she'd ever imagined, but it was a different kind of exhaustion, the exhaustion of rebuilding, not just enduring. She barely noticed the ache in her arms as she hammered fence posts, or the sweat that plastered her hair to her forehead while she scrubbed the old kitchen floors. The nightmares still came sometimes. Gunfire, burning hay, men in balaclavas. But they faded faster in the morning, replaced by the clatter of hammers, the whinnying of horses, and the laughter of children. For the first time since Afghanistan, Vicky could sleep more than a few hours without waking up gasping for air. Ashcombe Haven, that's what she decided to call it. The idea had come to her in a quiet moment, standing with Midnight Crown at the edge of the property as the sun melted into the Cotswold hills. It would be a place for healing, not just for horses battered by greed and cruelty, but for people haunted by wars no one could see. Veterans, children with anxiety or trauma, anyone who needed a second chance. She remembered what it felt like to touch Midnight Crown's trembling neck in the smoky dark and realized they were both still alive, both survivors. That moment had saved her. in a way words could never explain. Ollie threw himself into the project with the same wild energy he'd once used to chase stories. He called in favors from everyone he'd ever interviewed: vets, trainers, even a few minor celebrities who'd owned rescue horses. Lady Bridget Fairfax became the unofficial godmother of the place, bringing fresh straw and ancient wisdom, keeping the local council in line with a glare that could silence even the pushiest bureaucrat. Harry Beaumont, newly sober and a little steadier every day, helped repair the stalls and run therapy sessions for shy kids who had never touched a horse before. It was hard work. Some mornings, Vicky wondered if she'd bitten off more than she could chew. There were permits to argue over, roofs to patch, anxious parents to reassure, and bills that never seemed to shrink. The estate's finances were still fragile. Every penny watched, every donation counted. But when she saw a teenager, eyes dull with too many hospital stays, break into a shy grin as Midnight Crown gently accepted a treat from their hand, she knew it was worth every ounce of worry. Midnight Crown became the star of Ashcombe Haven almost overnight. His story, broadcast on news and social media, drew attention from all over England. Letters poured in, offers to volunteer, small donations, veterans sharing memories of their own war horses from another era. People wanted to believe in redemption, and somehow the black horse with the white crown had come to embody it. He was gentle with the anxious, patient with the loud and clumsy, and endlessly forgiving of the world's noise and confusion. The children called him Magic Crown and fought over who would brush his coat or lead him down the new therapy trail that wound through the wildflower meadow. Vicky worked closely with a team of therapists from a nearby hospital. They brought groups of veterans each week, men and women brittle with silence and pain, eyes always scanning for threats, hands that flinched at sudden noises. The horses didn't ask questions or offer pity. Instead, they simply stood, warm and solid, letting the tension drain away. Midnight Crown was the favorite, of course, but every horse in the program, rescued, stubborn, sometimes scarred, brought something different. Together, they formed a herd of the healing and the healed. One chilly morning, Vicky watched as a former Royal Marine, a mountain of a man with tattoos and scars on his arms, struggled to mount Midnight Crown. The man's hands shook as he tried to find his balance, and for a moment, panic flickered across his face. But Midnight Crown just stood steady as a rock, waiting. Vicky walked up, put a reassuring hand on the Marine's back, and whispered, "Breathe in. Let him take your weight. You're not alone." The man took a ragged breath, swung his leg over, and finally settled onto the horse's back. His face crumpled, tears streaking down his cheeks as the horse took a few slow steps forward. No one spoke, but everyone felt it. A shift, a victory, however small. By summer's end, Ashcombe Haven had become something the papers called a rare jewel in the Cotswolds. Local schools brought anxious children for morning rides, NHS therapists scheduled regular sessions, and even the parish council, once so skeptical, donated new benches for the garden. Midnight Crown led every session, ears pricked, coat shining, a silent reminder that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but moving forward in spite of it. One afternoon, as golden light spilled through the hedgerows and the bell from the church tolled softly in the distance, Vicky found herself standing in the paddock, arms folded, watching a group of children laughing around Midnight Crown. Harry and Ollie leaned on the fence beside her. Ollie nudged her gently. "You built this, you know. You took all that pain and turned it into something beautiful." Vicky shook her head, smiling. "We all did. Me, you, Harry, Bridget, and that stubborn old horse. Harry looked out at the field, his voice thick. Ashcombe's a haven now, not just for them, for us too. Vicky looked up at the sky, feeling the last shreds of fear drift away. For the first time in her life, the future didn't seem like something to dread. It felt instead like a wide-open field, waiting. Months passed. Autumn's gold faded into the silvers and blues of a Cotswold winter, and Ashcombe Haven became a kind of legend, first a local miracle, then a national story. The estate's fields bristled with the laughter of children, the quiet footsteps of veterans, and the steady, patient presence of horses that had come back from the edge. The blackened scars on the barn were sanded and repainted, not hidden but honored, reminders of how quickly darkness can fall and how stubbornly light returns. One afternoon, Vicky found herself sitting at the heavy oak desk in what used to be her uncle's study. Rain tapped the window panes, filling the house with a calm, steady music. Papers were stacked neatly. Therapy program schedules, bank statements, thank you letters, a brochure for Help for Heroes. The Veterans Charity that had begun referring participants from across the region. She let herself breathe, really breathe, for the first time in what felt like years. In front of her lay the final legal documents. Ashcombe Grange, now officially registered as a not-for-profit trust, dedicated to equine therapy and community service. She signed her name with a steady hand, feeling both the weight and the freedom of the moment. It struck her just how far the estate, and everyone on it, had come since that wild, rain-swept night so many months ago. In the end, Fitzroy had been charged with insurance fraud, animal cruelty, conspiracy, and attempted arson. The trial had been public, painful, but necessary. He'd been sentenced to prison, stripped of his council seat and titles, his fortune eaten up by restitution and legal costs. News programs dissected his fall, but Vicky found she cared little for the gossip. What mattered were the people and animals who'd survived his schemes and the new stories they were writing together. Yet the questions lingered. What made a man like Fitzroy so ruthless? Was it ambition, greed, the centuries-old hunger for status and control that ran deep in some corners of the British upper class? Sitting in the old study, Vicky realized Ashcombe's history was tangled in those same roots. A family rising and falling, bruised by pride and tradition, sometimes blind to the rot under their own roof. Fitzroy had been able to thrive because for too long, people had looked away, thinking, that's just how things are done. She made herself a quiet promise. Never again. She picked up a notepad and began to draft a letter to her supporters, staff, and the broader Ashcombe community. We built Ashcombe Haven because we believe in second chances, both for animals and for ourselves. We've seen that healing isn't linear. It's messy, hard, and sometimes you need to fall apart before you come back stronger. Our mission is to shine a light on what's hidden, trauma, injustice, and even our own fear. We do this together, with courage and compassion. Thank you for believing with us. As she finished, she glanced at a pile of research sent over by one of the therapy team, a recent study by the Royal College of Psychiatrists, showing that horseback therapy didn't just help physical rehabilitation. It rewired neural pathways for trauma survivors, helping them reconnect with their bodies, their emotions, their trust in others. She saw it every day. A child learning to control her breathing as she guided a horse around the paddock. A veteran relaxing for the first time in months as a warm muzzle pressed gently into his shoulder. The doors of Ashcombe were always open now, the boundaries between past and present softer than ever. Sometimes Vicky would lead a small group up the hillside at sunset, telling stories about the estate's history, its battles, its triumphs, its failures. She spoke honestly about PTSD, about her own nightmares, and the moments she'd nearly walked away. Some nights, the group would sit quietly on the damp grass, just listening to the horses grazing nearby, letting silence say what words couldn't. But healing didn't mean erasing the past. It meant owning it, learning from it, and choosing something better. The scars on the stable beams, the bruises in Midnight Crown's coat, the pain in Harry Beaumont's eyes, these weren't marks of shame anymore. They were proof that people could change, that the worst days could make way for the best. One blustery afternoon, Lady Bridget arrived with a box of old journals and photographs, snapshots of Ashcombe through the decades, faded letters from soldiers, portraits of horses lost to war or time. They spread them on the kitchen table, proud faces, weary eyes, moments frozen before disaster or joy. Bridget touched one, her voice soft. "We're just the next chapter, Victoria. Ashcombe will be here when we're long gone. But what we do with our time, well, that's our legacy." Vicky took Midnight Crown for a ride at dusk, the hills washed in tangerine and indigo. The air was crisp, the world utterly quiet. She let the horse choose the pace, letting herself feel the steady rhythm of his gait, the powerful heartbeat beneath her legs. They reached the crest of the hill, the Cotswolds rolling out in every direction, golden fields giving way to dark woods and distant twinkling lights. She reined in, closing her eyes for a moment, letting the breeze cut through every old wound, every old fear. She spoke quietly, not sure if the horse or the wind would answer. "You and me, boy, we walked through fire and came out the other side. That's all courage is, I think. Just walking on, even when the path disappears." She opened her eyes and saw the estate below, a patchwork of green and gold, the old house gleaming with fresh paint, children playing by the pond, the scent of wood smoke rising from the kitchen. It was more than she'd ever imagined, and somehow, exactly what she needed. As the sun dipped and the sky deepened into violet, Vicky turned Midnight Crown for home. They took their time, savoring each hoofbeat, each gust of cool air. At the gate, she dismounted, pressing her forehead to his, feeling his warmth. Inside, the house hummed with quiet life. Ollie tapping at his computer, Harry and Lady Bridget making tea, the distant sound of children's laughter. The world outside might still be broken, dangerous, uncertain, but here, in this small haven, they had built something unbreakable. Before she went inside, Vicky recorded a short message on her phone for the Ashcombe Haven website. A call to support the Help for Heroes Fund, a plea for anyone watching to keep telling the truth, to keep fighting for what's right, even when the odds seem impossible. She ended with the words that had become her own private creed. "When courage walks beside integrity, even the darkest night reveals the way home." She sent the message, switched off the lights, and stepped outside one last time to watch the stars prick through the night. Ashcombe Grange was no longer just a place of ghosts. It was a place of hope, a beacon in the Cotswolds, proving that every wound could become a window, every ending the beginning of something better.